Hey guys, with me not here today, I just thought I would go ahead and talk through some of the problems from your review I left you, just in case you're a little stuck. I'm not going to do all of them, but I just thought a few of them would be helpful. So, let's start with number 1. Okay, it is the cotangent of negative 7 pi over 4. Okay, give me a second. I want to increase the size of my pen a little bit. All right, so a couple things we're going to do to begin with. All right, first off, it's cotangent, so we're going to use tangent. But second, we need to figure out where negative 7 pi over 4 is. Well, there's a few different ways you can do this. Okay, 7 pi over 4, negative 7 pi over 4 is actually in quadrant 1. Okay, way you can do it is you can take your negative 7/4 and add 2 to it. So you can take your negative 7 pi over 4 and you can add 2 pi. Which really, y'all, anytime you're adding 2, you're just adding 2 times your denominator to your numerator. Because, you know, you've got to get common denominators. 2 times 4 is 8. Well, negative 7 pi over 4 plus 8 pi over 4 is just going to be pi over 4, because negative 7 plus 8 is 1. So, this is going to be in the same location as pi over 4, which is your quadrant 1. You could also count backwards around your unit circle. Okay, remember negative means you're going clockwise. So down here in quadrant 4, it would be negative pi over 4, negative 3 pi over 4, negative 5 pi over 4, negative 7 pi over 4. You could have realized, okay, that's almost negative 2. Well, negative 2 pi would be on this side. So we're almost there, so we have to be in quadrant 1. There's a lot of different ways, but whichever way you choose to do it, you've got to realize that negative 7 pi over 4 is in quadrant 1. It's in the same spot as pi over 4, so this question is the exact same thing as cotangent of pi over 4. Well, when we do this, you know me, I like to switch it to tangent. And you can view it as tan pi over 4 or tan negative 7 pi over 4. But whichever way you do it, remember pi over 4, x and y are the same thing. So tangent is y over x. Denominators match, so y's numerator is root 2, x's numerator is root 2, so tangent's 1. Therefore, cotangent's the reciprocal of 1, which is 1. Okay? So that is number 1. Number 2. This one is another cotangent. This time it's cotan 4 pi over 3. Well, y'all, 4 pi over 3 is on our circle. Okay, it's over there in quadrant 3. I'm going to start by looking at tangent. Okay, my coordinate at 4 pi over 3 is negative 1/2, negative root 3 over 2. So, remember, tangent is y over x. Denominators match, so we can ignore them. They're going to cancel out. So, numerator is going to be negative root 3. Denominator is going to be negative 1. So, tangent is just root 3. So, when we do cotan, we're going to flip that over and it's going to become 1 over root 3, which you will have to rationalize. So you end up with root 3 over 3. Okay? All right. So, let me figure out how to add a page here. We'll just go up top. Do it up there. Okay. So number 3, we have secant negative 210 degrees. Well, you might know where negative 210 is. If you don't, you can take your negative 210 and you can add 360 to it. And when you add 360, that will end up being 150. So negative 210 and 150 are coterminal to each other. So instead of viewing it as secant negative 210, you could do secant 150, which, if it's secant, I'm going to flip it over to cosine, so it's a little bit easier. Now, 150, the coordinate is going to be root 3 over 2, 1/2. And y'all, you pull that straight from the unit circle. So cosine is negative root 3 over 2. So when I flip it to do secant, and again, you can use negative 150 or negative 210 here, it doesn't matter. You're going to end up flipping your negative root 3 over 2, so it's negative 2 over root 3. You got to rationalize. So you end up with negative 2 root 3 over 3. Okay? So, let's see if I can add a page here. There we go. All right, so we've done 1, 2, and 3. Okay, let's look at number 4. Cosine negative 45 degrees. Well, hopefully you all know that that's quadrant 4. If not, you could add 360. Negative 45 degrees is in the same spot as 315 degrees, where your coordinate is root 2 over 2, negative root 2 over 2. So cosine is just going to be your x-coordinate. Oh my gosh. There we go. Root 2 over 2. Okay? Number 5, secant of negative 3 pi over 2. Well, negative 3 pi over 2, that is the same spot because you've got to remember, you've got to go clockwise to get there. So that is up here where pi over 2 usually is. Pi over 2 is the original. That coordinate is 0, 1. So the cosine of negative 3 pi over 2 is 0. But when you do secant, you've got to flip it. Remember, the reciprocal of 0 is undefined. Okay? Let's see, what's another good one? Let's jump down to 22. 22 is the cosecant of 35 pi over 6. Well, all you've got to do is know what quadrant you're in to know the coterminal angle. So, again, to go through those steps, you could just subtract 2 pi, and 2 pi is just the denominator times 2. So 6 times 2 is 12, so 12 over 6 is 2. You could do that a few times to figure out where you are. Or you could say 35 pi over 6. 6 goes into 35 5 times. And then there's 5 pi over 6 left. Well, your odd pi's are on the left side. So 5 would be over here. And then you're going 5, 6 more. That's not just a little bit more. A little bit more would be one quadrant. You're going a lot more. So we're going to almost be going 1 whole half more. So we're going to be down here in quadrant 4. So it's going to be coterminal to 11 pi over 6 because that's the angle over 6 in quadrant 4. Another way to think of that is 35 divided by 6. That's almost 6. Well, 6 is an even pi, so if we're almost to 6, we have to be quadrant 4. Either way, you've got to know you're in quadrant 4. You can know your coterminal angle is 11 pi over 6. And if you know that, you know your coordinate would be root 3 over 2, negative 1/2. So if we want to do cosecant, I'm going to do sine first. So sine of 11 pi over 6 would be negative 1/2. So when I flip it, cosecant would be negative 2. Okay? Let's do 23. 23 is the tangent of 16 pi over 3. So again, you can think about, okay, 16 over 3. 3, 6, 9, 12, 15. Okay, 15 over 3 is 5. We're a little bit past there, so we're in quadrant 3. You can take your 16 over 3 and subtract your 9. Ooh, that's not 9. Subtract 6. And do that a couple times because you would have to do it more than once. Or you can remember that 16 pi over 3. 3 goes into 16 5 times. You have a pi over 3 left. So that means we have an odd pi because 5 is odd. And we're just going pi over 3 more. So we're just going a little bit more. So a little bit more means we're just going one quadrant more. So we're down in quadrant 3. Okay? So in quadrant 3, the angle that's in quadrant 3 that's over 3 is 4 pi over 3. So that's the angle you're coterminal to. That coordinate is negative 1/2, negative root 3 over 2. So if you want to do tangent, tangent would just be, remember tan is y over x. So tangent would be negative root 3 over negative 1, which would just be positive root 3. And I'll go ahead and do 24 as well while I'm down here. 24, we're talking about 11 pi over 4. Okay. We're actually doing the sine of 11 pi over 4. So 11 pi over 4, that's almost 3 pi because 11 over 4 is really close to 12 over 4. Okay, remember thinking of those factors, 4, 8, 12. 11's close to 12. Well, my odd pi's are over here. So if we're almost there to an odd pi, we have to be in quadrant 2. You could also take your 11 pi over 4 and you could subtract your 2 pi, which would just be 8 over 4, which would give you 3 pi over 4. This is, I think, the first one we've done where you only have to subtract it once. 3 pi over 4 is the angle in quadrant 2. You could have also just written it as a mixed number. 4 goes into 11 2 times with a 3 left over. So even pi, so 2 pi we know is over here. Then we're going 3/4. We've almost gone one more. So you have to continue it, not just an itty bitty bit, which is one quadrant. You got to go almost a whole half. So that's why we're in quadrant 2. And at 3 pi over 4, our coordinate is negative root 2 over 2, positive root 2 over 2, and sine is your y coordinate. So our answer is root 2 over 2. Okay? When you flip over the back, it's calculator at the beginning. Remember your mode. Okay? So remember to switch your mode. Okay? Also remember that when you type in your reciprocals, you can't type in cosecant, secant, and cotangent. For cosecant, you have to type in 1 divided by the sine